Good morning, everybody. Sometimes I'm wrong, and I have to admit that. And I put out on social media a couple of days ago when we all heard about the concrete chaos in the UK, that this was incompetence. The government was incompetent because they'd known about problems with concrete in public buildings, mostly in schools, but also some hospitals and some police stations, some court buildings, even possibly lots of high-rise council flats as well. They'd known about this for 5 years, and yet suddenly they didn't do anything, and suddenly they've announced this just before the start of the school academic year here in 2023, and therefore 104 schools that we know of at the moment, but possibly more will be added to that number, are either closed or partially closed because they contain buildings with this type of concrete. RAAC stands for Reinforced Autoclaved Aerated Concrete. Apparently it's very, it's low density, it's got lots of air and holes in it. So, it only has a lifespan of about 30 years, and therefore, buildings that are built with this stuff should only be used for 30 years, and then they should be knocked down and something else should be built in their place. But I do wonder now if I was wrong in saying that this was incompetence. Rather, it is planned chaos, just another part of the chaos and corrosion and degeneration that we're seeing of our nation and nations around the West. And I say that because they could have announced this at any time, but why leave it just to the point where kids are going to go back to school and there is absolutely no time for anyone in school who wants to do a good job? Some head teachers, some teachers do want to do a good job and educate their kids. I was a teacher for 17 years before I got into politics. They're not all cultural Marxist, although that is a big problem in schools. That's a whole other issue. But the government announcing this just days before, just a weekend before, 9 million or 10 million children are supposed to go back to school, and therefore many tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of them can't go back to school, is perhaps beyond incompetence. Was this actually timed to create maximum chaos? Because if they'd said that this was a problem at the beginning of July or the end of June, then there would have been 2 months to get builders in, to fix things up, to put structural works in to make sure that any buildings that could be salvaged and made safe could be made safe. There would be plenty of time to put in emergency measures, sort of put in, when I was a kid, I spent 2 years, some of my lessons I had 2 years in a porter cabin because, the school I was in had some building work on the main block. So, that's something that is a possible contingency that any school could do. And, a couple of months they could actually make plans to do that. But doing it right now, along with some of the headlines which are being brought out, schools in lockdown, schools are going into lockdown again, not because of a virus, whatever you think of that, but because of this chaos with the concrete that's been used to build a lot of these schools from the 1950s to the 1990s cheaply, on the cheap. And of course, that's obviously going to cause problems down the line. You don't have to be a genius to work out if a building has got a 30-year lifespan, well, after 30 years, it's going to have problems, isn't it? So they did know about this and announced it at the worst possible time, which is creating maximum chaos. Along with that, there was the air traffic system. The national air traffic system went completely wrong, broke down, crashed, and everybody started to having to use pens and papers to to work out the flight plans of where aeroplanes were going to go over the UK airspace a week ago, again just at the end of the summer holiday, just before schools are going to be going back. Parents, kids, many teachers as well, are stuck in other countries, and 1,600 flights were cancelled on one day, and the backlog from that isn't going to be cleared for 2 weeks, maybe more, while everybody tries to get themselves on another flight home or make alternative arrangements to come back to the UK. Not so hard if you're on holiday in the north of France, but if you're on holiday in Turkey or Tunisia, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Well, if you're in Tunisia, you could jump on a migrant ferry. It's all bad joke there, sorry. Yeah, that's another issue. The government is causing maximum chaos with that as well. All of these things happening, but they're not controlling our borders. The one thing that does work well in this country is illegal people trafficking across the channel. Yeah, the one thing that shouldn't be working properly, that they should close down, that's fine. But the air traffic control system, the buildings in schools, and potentially many more buildings, hospital buildings, court buildings, etc., are going to be closed because of this concrete chaos. So just to say here, I actually was probably wrong in initially saying that this was incompetence. It probably is some kind of somebody somewhere agitating, bringing 2 or 3 or 4 bits of complete chaos together at the same time, and then using the word lockdown because they're trying to stir up again this narrative that there's going to be another pandemic at the end of 2023. Well, I think most people can see through that. It's absolute nonsense, and we're not going to have it. But these things all seem to be going together at the same time. So make of that what you will. Let me know what you think in the comments. It'll be very interesting what you think as well. Is this just incompetence, or is this all orchestrated? Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless you all.